Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of the Neurovation podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by Thomas Rochelot, the founder and creator of Rock Water Create. So Thomas designs and builds lamps, but not just any lamps. Each one is a carefully curated piece of functional art made from blended materials. What started out as a simple Christmas gift idea has grown into a local brand where he's constantly experimenting with creativity, design, and functionality. Thomas and I first met in an entrepreneurship class where we learned the fundamentals of entrepreneurship. Now he's taken that experience and turned it into something very real. In this episode, we'll talk about his journey from studying engineering and entrepreneurship in a classroom to launching his own company, and how his dyslexia has shaped his creative process. Thomas's testimonial is a story about passion, perseverance, and the power of thinking differently. I'm excited to share this conversation with you. Hi, Thomas.
Hello, Victoria. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Of course, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So before you tell us a bit about yourself and your brand, can you tell us something that you're really bad at?
In life,
Yeah.
I'm a really poor swimmer. I don't know, for some reason that came up to mind first, so.
Interesting.
And I can't spell.
To be expected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now tell us who you are.
So, as you mentioned, I'm Thomas Rochelot. Born and raised in Montreal, studied mechanical engineering at McGill with a minor in technological entrepreneurship. And I graduated university a year ago or such. And I have my first, what I call adult job, so my first 9 to 5. And on the side, I've started making these lamps, as you mentioned.
Okay. Can you tell us more about your lamps?
Of course. So the lamps, as you also alluded to earlier, they started off as a Christmas gift to my family and members. And I saw the very first concept of folding sheets to make these types of lamps online. And I was like, okay, that's a cool design, remotely simple to make. I have the tools, meaning the printer. I could try and make my own. And so I did it, got some cool feedback, iterated slightly. And then for Christmas, I was like, whoa, this is cool. It's a cool gift. I'm sure my family and friends will appreciate a crafted gift for myself. And so started making, I think, 4 different models. They're similar, of course, but 4 different models within the same family for my friends and family for Christmas, which was a very crunch period in which I had like a week and a half to make these 4 different models, which really pushed me. Then afterwards, I was like, okay, now I have these files. I can still innovate and improve some design aspects, but might as well post it somewhere, see if it catches. And so I started off with Marketplace, put maybe 1 model on it, got 4 or 5 messages within an hour. So I took it off. I was like, okay, well, I'm not ready to like make these lamps. A week later or such, I had put 3 designs on Marketplace, and slowly but surely orders started to come up, and there's been a constant order intake since, which is on average 3 lamps a week.
Okay. And how did you go from like this first prototype that you made for your family to the lamps that you're actually advertising on Facebook Marketplace?
So the going from the initial design to, I guess, a more refined design has been not super linear in the sense that I work on a design and it's functional. And let's say on the side I have another concept that I'm working on, and I'll innovate, or I'll find a way to print it faster, or I'll add a design that makes it such that I need to print 1 less piece. And like, oh, it's a cool feature. Then I add it to my original designs. So whenever I kind of unlock a cool aspect, I go back to my original designs and I implement it. And that's kind of how it grows and it becomes more refined. But there's still always space to refine and improve. And what I'm starting to think about is, yes, the product visually, aesthetically, but there's also how you design it to be assembled, and then there's the how do you design it to be manufactured. So there's like 3 main design aspects to this whole process.
Okay. And can you tell us a bit more about your process, like from the ideation phase to the actually creation phase?
Yeah, so like a lot of people of, I guess, our age group, I spend some time on Instagram and I see some inspiration and cool products out there, and there's a lot of really talented people. And so I draw a lot of inspiration from being on Instagram and looking at cool stuff. And I'm like, this is nice. The price tag is like super expensive, maybe $500 or more. And then I'm like, I could do it. Maybe not the same product, but I could do a version of it with my own way, cheaper materials, but so on. And so the process is having an idea, a vision of some sort, saying to myself, I can do that. And then I try, and then I print some pieces, and then it fails, and then I need to adapt it, remeasure, and then I innovate. And like I said before, whenever I change a feature on a lamp, I need to make sure that I think about all the how that new feature impacts the other components of the design. Because if I change a diameter somewhere or how something fits, and I did not think about the other piece that houses that new function, then I'll go to assemble it and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot to design or like increase the diameter or change it and so on. So there's a lot of like trial and error, and when I design, I try to make sure I thought about all the possibilities before printing it. But at a certain point, also you need to print, to have it in your hands, see how it works, see how it prints, see if there's any flaws. There's a lot of also value to be had in rapid prototyping, but then again, you don't want to just prototype and waste plastic and time and all that. So the process is a lot of back and forth with the vision, sketching, having an idea of shapes, proportions, what's feasible, what are my limitations, and then since most of my lamps are in a big part printed, 3D printed, and I use a Bamboo Lab P1S, and so a big constraint is the print bed, the size, which is around 25 centimeter by 25 centimeter, which is the max I can print. So that's a very real limitation, but in a design space, limitations are important, or else if you have infinite options, then you'll never conclude. So having these limitations is a good way to like bounce ideas off that wall.
Okay. Can you tell us more about the materials that you use?
Of course. So the main material I use is PLA, which is the more standard 3D printing material. And PLA, what I guess I like about it, but it's also inherent in the material, is that is a corn-based plastic. So it's not petroleum or another type of plastic, which would have a higher environmental footprint. So this is PLA, so my little conscience is happy with it. However, I would not feel comfortable advertising it as a fully biodegradable, super sustainable product, because I don't want to be one of those partake in greenwashing and try and convince something to consumer. So main materials are PLA. In my vision, at some point when there's more resources and available options, I would want to invest into PLA, which is made out of recycled materials, which has a directly lower footprint. And recently, a material that I've started playing with is stainless steel.
Okay.
Why? Because I just stumbled upon a cool couple pieces, and I was like, this I could turn into a lamp, and they're easily accessible, and the finish, I find it very aesthetic. The metal, the little more glossy, industrial, but very sleek look, that added to the PLA, I feel it increases the perceived value also of the product. It's not just plastic, it has more rigidity to it, it's more heavy, and people associate a lot of value to stuff that are heavy for some reason. You know, when you pick something up, it's heavy, it's quality, but not all the time. Sometimes people just put like cement or sand in pieces to make them heavier, just that you have the feeling that it's better quality.
Okay, interesting. So you started this around, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
How are the lamps that you first created different from the lamps that you're creating now?
Yeah. So the lamps that I first created are within the family, let's say, of the sheets. So there's one here that, for those who are watching the video, can see it's the pumpkin model, which is one of the first ones. So it's basically 2 rings at a different height, and there's 10 panels which are folded on these rings. And so the family, like the sheets, let's say, those are the first models and the ones that I sell online. And as I alluded to before, right now I'm playing with different models, kind of challenging myself a little more, because it's a cool design, it's easy to make, it sells, people find it pretty. But I want to challenge myself and maybe make something more different, more me, more unique, because like I mentioned earlier, this concept I got strongly inspired by online. And so now I'm like, okay, it's cool, and it's hard to have a very unique product since there's millions of products and designs. So right now, this I'm happy with, but a part of me is like, I want my new or future products to be more, rock water inspired, which is why I'm playing with different materials, which I don't think people have played with before. And a material that I forgot to mention that I use, not often, but I have, is also papier mâché. Okay. So one of the lamps I made is made with recycled cardboard, which I blended and I added some glue and then blah, blah, blah. And I used that as a sculpting material, which I put on a old cardboard cylinder, which I took from like Rona. It was in the scrap. And then I asked the guy, can I use this recycled, this cardboard cylinder? Like, yeah, go ahead. And I took it, I drilled some holes in it. Then I added the papier mâché overlay to have some nice texture. And then I also use some wall, how's it called again? Plaster, sorry. Some wall plaster to cover the base to get some more like earthy vibes out of it. So those are also other materials which I've played with.
Okay, interesting. And you say that going forward, you want the brand to reflect you a bit more. Mm-hmm. I know that you're vegan, and you've talked about how some of the materials you use are upcycled or corn sourced. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit more how you envision the future of Rock Water Create and how it might connect to your engagement towards sustainability?
Of course. So if we want to talk future, I need to add an important reality aspect of it, which is that I'm leaving in 2-3 weeks for 8 months. Mm-hmm. And where I'm going for these 8 months is a super isolated, remote dam in northern BC for work. So during that time, there won't be a lot of innovation growth, but my roommate and partner at this point, I've been training for him to be able to take the orders, manage the printer, and sell while I'm gone. Mm-hmm. So the whole future and growing will have to be on a pause for these 8 months. Give or take, then I'll come back and we can start growing. So now to come back to your question, how do I see sustainability and my vision going forward? So materials are an important point. Like every product, the biggest portion or percentage of its environmental footprint probably comes from where the materials come from and what the materials are. So I want to be able to source some recycled PLA, or maybe even ideally from Canada or close by and not from across oceans. That could also lower the footprint. Using other recycled components like papier mâché or other stuff I'm very open to. And a important aspect of 3D printing that not everybody is aware is the waste that it does. Because when you print a piece, there's a lot of retail. There's little scraps that the machine kind of poops out. It's literally called a poop. I have a poop bin attached to my to my printer. And so there's a lot of scraps. And then when you prototype, there's other pieces which, you don't use at the end. And so I'm trying to think about ways to use my poop, my 3D printer poop, to make something out of it, to upcycle my own garbage. And so PLA, it melts quite easily, and that's how you print, basically. So right now I'm brainstorming ways of being able to melt my scraps into maybe a mold of some sort, or maybe into a sheet. And if I'm able to melt my plastic and then make a sheet out of it, I could use that sheet probably in a lamp to diffuse light again. So it would be cool to have a full loop circle and then reuse my scraps as new materials within the whole process.
I see.
So that's one part of it. And another point maybe I could add to the whole vision is, maybe two. The whole packaging and delivery, there's also a lot of footprint that are associated to that. Right now, I'm not doing any deliveries. It's only happening in Montreal, which is simpler for me because I don't need to do the logistics, the shipping costs, the packaging costs, and sourcing all of that. But if at some point I want to be able to ship, then options between or alternatives between the classic plastic bubble wraps or some more recycled materials. So all of that would have to fall in and be as sustainable as possible. And maybe a last point on the vision here and sustainability would be making sure that other materials which maybe I can't get from recycled plastic or cardboard, such as metals, that I get these pieces in a way that lowers the overall footprint. So if I can get a piece of metal which is already mass produced to an extent, like from Rona or whatever, then that tells me that, okay, I won't have any issues to get this material, so it's available. And there's a bunch of like manufacturing facilities somewhere that have the blueprints, that have the machines to make this, meaning I don't need to invest the cost, the money to have a facility to print these or to manufacture. And I can just hop on that train and get the output. And so for my vision, I don't know, I haven't done the full like life cycle analysis, but I feel that if I can use the output of an existing manufacturing facility, then the footprints are less because I don't need to make my own facility.
That makes sense. So you said that you were the one designing the lamps, you were the one printing them out and assembling them and delivering. But you also talked about a partner. Where does he come into play into this?
So partner and roommate, he comes into this really. I mean, since we live together and we have a lot of shared, hobbies and passions and interests, when I got the printer, he was also very excited. Like, oh, cool! It's basically a big toy. And I was able to like print for him some brackets to like help support stuff in his room and just stuff in the fridge or on our coffee machine. I printed something; it fits perfectly. It picks up all the extra coffee powder, let's say. So 3D printing is very useful if you know how to use it and you have a bit of background. But to come back to your question, so the partner is in a way my backup plan because I'm leaving. I think we would have partnered up independently of me going abroad, but right now that's the main motivation is like, okay, let me train you, that way we can keep selling lamps and not have this on hold. Also, my roommate does have a cool skill set which I do not have, which complements my skill set and makes me be able to not do stuff I don't want to do, such as the whole marketing, making reels and all that stuff. Like he enjoys creating content. He studied, has a bachelor in marketing and sustainability, and that's what he works in right now. And he's good at it. He's also a photographer. So from that perspective, I'm very happy to have his vision and input from that side. Because like I said, I don't really want to spend a lot of time making reels and not all that, but I am aware that it is important to create content and be online.
It is. And apart from him, is there anyone else helping you?
Not really. At this moment. At this moment, it's really mostly me. Sometimes I'm like, okay, yo, Raf, come in the room. Let me show you. Like, I'm fixing something. So I'm like, oh, come see. That way you'll be able to do it if it happens to you. But right now, it's really a one-man operation. But when I come back, I have a potential vision of onboarding this one roommate, which is the marketing background. My other roommate, he's a software engineer and a business major. So he could do a really killer website. Very nice. So that would be like his job. And I have a other friend, not a roommate this time, but a friend who at some point had his own online business and was selling was items made out of cement. Was House of Crete, and so chess sets and also like office supply stuff, very aesthetic and nice, and he was able to live off of that for the past 4 years, so making decent. And so he had to stop for a bunch of external reasons. All that to say, he has also a lot of valuable skills and assets that I would very gladly onboard. Meaning that he's been on Amazon, on Etsy, he managed with shipping, the logistics, and all of that, which right now I do not have knowledge. I could, of course, inform myself, and I will at that point in time. But having him would be a huge asset. And also, I know he's very good when it comes to manufacturing and like honing in on a little issue and spending hours just thinking about how can we make this better, how can we make this more efficient. So he would be also a very key asset. And it happens that he has the same printer as I do. Because right now my printer is probably my biggest bottleneck because these lamps on average take 10 hours to print. So if I have another printer, then I'm doubling the capacity, which is good.
I see. It seems like you have a nice team that's coming up together. I'm excited to see how it goes in 8 months.
Yeah, me too.
Let's go a bit back to your background. How do you think studying engineering and maybe entrepreneurship helped you bring Rock Water Create to life?
A very real impact is learning how to CAD. So learning how to design in a 3D space. So first semester of university in mechanical engineering, you learn how to design in a 3D space.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really those skills that I still use today to design these lamps. And, through this program engineering, I was also able to learn about manufacturing, assembly, and all that, and even slightly, not very, but a bit of 3D printing. So it did add to my skill set. And engineering as a whole, maybe less the school, because school is very, fundamentals, and especially with COVID, within my 4 years, which took almost 2 years. 2 years in which I would have had my more hands-on courses, like going to the machine shop and, making stuff. But now for me, it was all online. So I kind of missed out on that. But through my internships and other life experience, they provided valuable skills in terms of okay, how do you assemble it? And then fitting, the tolerances of pieces is a very annoying thing. It's just the fine tuning. But if stuff doesn't fit nice or don't snap well, the lamps or the products are misaligned. And so it's also concept which I learned slightly in school, but also at work, learning about norms of fitting. You want to a slide fit or a tight fit. All these ISO norms that exist. And so school for sure helped me with this new endeavor because it helps me understand, okay, how do you make stuff? And slightly, there's not a lot of physics going on in the lamps, but it is, there's some tension and then there's some flexion. And I'm okay, sometimes a piece cracks for a reason. It's okay, why does it crack? Because there's a little stress fracture here, meaning there's a stress concentration. So I kind of go back to my engineering brain to kind of figure out what's the cause, and then I try to fix it.
I see. And it seems that the literature has picked up that people with dyslexia have an enhanced ability to visualize things in 3D or to be more creative. Mm-hmm. Do you think this is the case for you?
Yeah, I would say that they have a strong ability to think in a 3D space. Mm-hmm. Going back to when I was a kid, I always liked to draw. Mm-hmm. And my mom was a painter, or still is, so in the household also, drawing was always recommended, and we had the tools, the paint and whatnot to just be able to do what you want. And also, I would often go in my dad's workshop and just tinker with stuff, and I would create inventions, which really did not work. They were more imaginary. But I would still break stuff, assemble it, screw something and something else, and then voila, invention. And so tinkering with the hands-on and also with the drawing on two sides, I think kind of helped me form this ability to think also in the 3D space. And I'm sure dyslexia, as you said, in the studies that came out, enhanced that ability to think in a 3D space. And engineering kind of forces you, because we have classes in which you need to think in a 3D space. And you're given 2D drawings of something, and then you need to make the 3D image. Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to think about the proportions, the visions, okay, what line am I seeing, on what plane is it, and so on.
The joy of calculus.
Yes.
Okay, and apart from tinkering and drawing, how do you think it's impacted you growing up?
Yeah, so maybe all through kindergarten to elementary and then to high school, I did not consider myself quite good at school. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of trouble to a point that in the fourth year of high school, I was low-key scared to fail the provincial French exam.
Okay.
And so that kind of initiated with me and my parents a conversation of we really don't want to fall behind just because of a couple spelling mistakes. Because on the other fronts, it was going quite well, but French has always been my most difficult subject, even though it's my first language.
Yeah, me too.
It's a complicated language. There's a lot of exceptions and exceptions to the exceptions. And so to make sure I don't fail this French exam, we went and then we seeked out a professional, and then we got a diagnostic of dyslexia, and I don't know how to pronounce this in English, but it's dysorthographic. Mm-hmm. So it's basically dyslexia, and people have a more common understanding, and then the dysorthographic is really more making up words, switching around the letters and really writing words as I hear them. Mm-hmm. And so once I got that, I was like, okay, perfect. Now I have my computer, my extra time, so I can make sure I don't fail. And I did not fail. And I was able to graduate high school.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But to come back to your question, it impacted me because, especially in French, a lot of trouble. And, sometimes I would be a little bit insecure about it. But since I would excel more in other topics, it kind of counterbalanced. I was like, okay, it's fine. It's only French. French sucks. But, and then at a certain point, like end of high school, for some reason, something happened in my brain. I guess it was puberty. But I just got really good at, like, math and science. But before that, it sucked. So it's really like end of high school that something switched. And then I was like, okay, I'm good at this. I like it. And, a classic vision or classic way of going to CEGEP University is let me just go in the program that opens up as many doors as possible. And so engineering kind of felt that way at first, and sciences and all that stuff. So, okay, I'm good at it. It opens up a lot of doors. So let me just continue down that path. And then engineering picked up, and there was more motivations that came to it. But I don't know if that answers your question fully.
No, it does. It answers it quite well. And just like, how do you feel like being dyslexic and dysorthographic today still impacts you, if it impacts you?
Yeah. So like today, less so, mostly because now, I'm not, graded on my spelling and my new adult job, though. People sometimes like Thomas, like there's a mistake here and there. So a new reflex that I've tried to like pick up is telling people with who I work, hey, yo, FYI, I'm bad at spelling. So do not, be scared or awkward to like point me out and correct me. Like, please correct me. And so, we're working together on like documents for clients. And so like, yes, give me your input, correct me. I will not take it bad. Like, we need to like help me. But there's also tools. A couple of years back, we had like, some more real software that you had to pay for, and it would cost you a lot. But now with AI and ChatGPT and then Copilot at work, almost every email I run through an AI of some sort, which corrects my spelling.
Yeah.
And so I don't need to worry too much about that. The only maybe other point which I could stress is, let's say I'm sharing my screen or I'm live with people and I need to write something and people can see what I'm writing in real time, then I'll be stressing. I'll be like, oh my God, like I'm supposed to write these notes down and I'm for sure going to be making a lot of mistakes. So maybe at that point I feel more not self-centered, but self-aware and just like awkward. Like, I don't want to make any mistakes. And because some people, I think it's less of a thing, but I do think that some people can be a bit more judgy and kind of correlate being able to spell to intelligence and all that, which I feel is a more old view, but I still do think that it is a view that some people hold. That if you can't spell, if you're doing a lot of mistakes, then go back to school or like go study some more. So, yeah.
I feel like especially in the Francophone world, that's something that's very, very prevalent.
Yeah.
So we talked about being stressed when people look at you. And I imagine that growing up, you also had like some sort of stress or maybe just general anxiety about the fact that something was a bit different about you. How were you able to cope?
I think a good coping system for a lot of different factors in life is a good support system, friends, family, and also activities. Luckily enough, I think I've always had that good environment, those friends, and very supportive families. So that was always there when I needed them. As a kid, I was also very shy for a big part of my life. I was a very shy and small kid. Like I was the smallest kid in the grade for a long part of my life. That really like meant it. Like, I'm the small kid. I can't spell. Not that it matters. But so coping, I feel just friends, and my friends would make a lot of fun of me, like not too seriously, but about my spelling and group chats. Like, it's Thomas, is like, call me like random names, which I probably shouldn't say on the podcast. But so that, but I think also coping and just, I guess, if I can extrapolate a little from your question, coping with stress or anxiety, for me, sports and martial arts has been a big factor.
Okay.
Because I did karate since the age of like 4 to 21, in which I have my black belt. And so in the basement of my house as a kid, I would have my tiny little dojo. I would have my punching bag and my weights. So whenever I would be frustrated or pissed off or whatever, I would just go downstairs, put my gloves on, and start punching the punching bag.
Okay, very therapeutic.
Yeah.
So having practiced karate for that many years, I imagine that it taught you discipline. Can you tell us how that kind of impacted your life going forward?
Yeah, definitely. So as you hinted to, karate, and there's a lot of different types of karate and more mainstream like movie karate, which I kind of like try to distance myself from. But yes, karate as a whole, a lot of self-discipline, especially after almost 20 years of practicing and getting a black belt. And so karate, yes, a lot of discipline, which I then used, I guess, to my advantage throughout my life. Because like I said earlier, school is kind of difficult. So having that discipline from karate, that perseverance, kind of made me double down on my homework and other learning aspects. And then also, just generally speaking, and I even mention it when I'm in an interview sometimes, I'm like, when at the end they're like, hey, give me an extra if ever you want to mention something. I'm like, okay, yeah, karate, discipline, and then just, if a lot of my friends and family will say that I'm very, like, I guess, a more typical engineer in the sense that très cartésien, all my stuff, I have a whiteboard in my room, and I like to track a lot of my stuff, and I guess some part of it comes from the discipline that was taught to me through karate. And also karate, there's the discipline in classes, but also when you do competitions, then you gotta work. And I did a lot of like fighting, and then throughout those years. And so there's a lot you gotta push yourself. When you're fighting, it's one of those sports that you can't just start running slower and then you lose the race or whatever. Because if you slow down, then you get punched in the face or you get knocked down. So it's really a high level of training. And so that drive, I guess, that desire to push, I've then used to my advantage in other spheres of my life, such as school, but also creativity, because everyone has ideas. Right? Everybody has $1 billion idea, but the hard part is taking that idea, then working with it, and then manifesting that idea and like making it to life. And I do think that the determination and motivation that I learned from karate helped me in everyday aspects in ways that I don't fully understand or fully am aware. But I do think that this discipline helped me really, let's say, crunch down during those couple weeks before Christmas to make the lambs, because I was like, let me really focus here and maybe do some push-ups and then I'll keep out fit and then do some more lambs. I'm exaggerating. But I do think that the discipline was very important to my life and going forward will remain.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Do you think you're ever pitched to a VC or something? It seems like you'd be pretty qualified.
Pitch the lambs to a VC?
Maybe not the lambs, but something else.
Something else, yeah. I mean, so the whole motivation behind taking a minor in technological entrepreneurship was for a certain vision of at some point in time have my own business. Okay. Never did I really think it would be lambs. And if I can loop back to engineering and sustainability and all that, the big motivation afterwards, after opening as many doors as possible for engineering, was okay, let me try and contribute to this fight against climate change or decarbonization or however you want to call it through technology and engineering. So that became my motivating factor in engineering. And then that minor, I was like, okay, it could be cool because in a very idealistic world, I could see myself as an entrepreneur having a business which helps save the world and makes me rich. So I'm like, I'm helping the world and I'm getting rich at the same time. It's perfect.
It's a win-win.
That's a win-win, but there's a lot of steps to get there. So that was more my vision of like having a business would be more on that tech side or like social, environmental, but still technological, less on the lamps, which is why I'm like, okay, if this is to take some magnitude, I want this to really be aligned with my more sustainable values.
And so far, how have your sales been increasing?
Good. Honestly, surprising in the sense that I started this whole selling lamps because, like I said earlier, I got good feedback. And at first, it was just a way to make me not go bankrupt. A way for me to have some cash to then be able to still have fun, prototype, and do more designs without breaking the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So it was less a means of like paying my rent or whatever, but this month it will almost pay my rent.
Okay.
Because in 4 or 5 weeks, now I'm approaching 20 lamps sold.
Okay.
And this weekend I was with my friends, and then I brought one of the lamps to my friend's place because he ordered one. And I think 3 or 4 people were like, "Oh, Thomas, it's so nice. I want one too." And so they'll place orders, meaning orders are good and surprisingly well. So it's a constant intake order of maybe, like I said, 3 lamps a week, which is good because I don't want it to be that much more to come back to the bottleneck of the printer, which takes around 10 hours per lamp. And I don't want the printer to run at night because I'm sleeping and it's in my room, so it'll be making a lot of noise. So yeah, so sales are being good, and there's no advertising, there's no nothing. All the sales come directly from Marketplace.
Okay.
So very low effort on my end. I just dump the lamps. I get a couple. Is this available? Is this available? I'm like, yes, it's available. And I have in my bio, don't ask if it's available. I make them, so you gotta place an order. Blah blah blah. So there's still some fine tunings to how I get the orders, because on Marketplace it's quite messy. So a lot of people asking you if it's available who aren't really interested. So now I've started like having a deposit feature. So you do a $25 deposit, which kind of covers for me most of the raw cost materials.
Okay.
And then we figure out a date and time to deliver the lamp.
Nice. It's good that you're doing so well in such a saturated marketplace, honestly.
Yeah, there's a lot of lamps all over the place, a lot. But on Marketplace, I haven't seen similar products.
Okay.
But on Instagram, like, I'm guessing I'm getting feed these lamps because that's what I'm looking at. And I see a lot of online businesses with 3D printing lamps. And I'm like, shit, there's so many out there. But some of them are all quite the same. So this I do feel is a distinguishable product, which I like about it. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, there's a lot of competition, it's super saturated. But on Marketplace, I don't really see any 3D printed products, except a couple. But a lot of people, what they do is they buy the STL files, so like the model files online, and then they print it, and then they sell the prints. So the whole business associates with like the files only.
Okay.
And some of my friends like, Thomas, you should sell the files. I'm like, I could, but it's for sure very low effort on my end. I don't need to print and assemble, but the margins are quite lower because you know there's all the effort that goes into it, and I enjoy making the product and selling it and having it in my hands.
Okay. Going back to the competition, where would you say your main competition is based?
That's a good question. Honestly, I have yet seen a direct competitor right now. Because if we look at the aesthetic of the lamps and also the price range, which right now they go for around, it depends on the model, but from 100 to 125-ish. And so, from my perspective, it's a affordable price range for a nice lamp, which is, Montreal-based. It's not like IKEA, super manufactured a billion times. And I guess... And to come back to the competition, it is a good question, which I haven't asked myself enough, because we know it's important. We spoke about it in class before. But yeah, I don't think I have any good answer for you, unfortunately. I think it's just other people who print on Marketplace. There's very few.
Okay.
But I've tried reaching out to them, like, hey, what's up? Can I ask you some business questions, like how many do you sell or whatever? Nobody answered me.
No answers. Well, you don't want to be feeding information to the competition, do you?
I guess, but it's, I guess you're right.
Right. Things to look into, I guess.
Definitely.
Okay. So going back to this competition, eventually you'll have to figure out a way to differentiate yourself from them. How do you think you'll come about that?
Yeah, good question. Well, a cool design always helps, but to go beyond, because it's not always about the design or the aesthetic. My vision right now as how to do so, and a function or something I appreciate from other everyday items and design, is the functionality. And why do I make lamps to start with? Is because I don't want to make something just for the sake of making something per se. And lamps have a very inherent functionality. They make light, and they're moody, they're cool, and all that. So functionality for me, I think, is very important. And also a feature that I put a lot of value on is having the user or the customer in control, in the sense that I want people to be able to dim the light. That's why I have a dimmer on it, because I know that people like it. People like having control. So it's very user focused. And all these lamps that I make are designed in a way that make them modular. You can have it upside down. You could have it on a table. If you want the stand or the base, the feet that goes with the lamp, I print it and it goes on there. I don't need to redesign the lamps. So all these lamps I'm designing them in a way that people could, let's say hypothetically, put different colors, like the panels with different bases and feet and all that, and kind of create your own lamp. Mm-hmm. And so to come back to the user control, I think that is something that nowadays, and especially with design, there's a lot of like, this is the design, there's a lot of thought that went into it, so don't touch it. It's the piece. Mm-hmm. Like they're giving less control to the user because it's the view of the artist, which I agree to. And that's kind of a line like, oh, well, if I allow clients to make whatever with the lamp, then it could end up being ugly. And I don't want that ugly lamp to reflect back to the company. Mm-hmm. And so you want to have a control, but then again, I want the users to be able to play with them, to be able to hang it, like I said, or put on a table, mix and match them. And so a more, I guess, long-term vision, and that's maybe where my other software engineer roommate comes in, is that website, I would like it such that you could choose the color, choose just the shape, choose how many levels it has, choose the base, and so very in real time kind of see all those changes. And so you customize, and also you could charge a little extra for customization. Mm-hmm. And so I feel that's a way that Rockwater, or whatever it will be called at that point in time, will be able to differentiate itself from the competition. Because I feel design space is very, this is the design, it's mine, like this is how it is, have it, and there's less play, there's less input from the user. So I think that's a cool feature which I want to hone in on a lot and really, emphasize about this whole brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me about like the duel between Apple and Android, in the sense that Steve Jobs was very controlling about his products and his designs, whereas the other was more open source and free to use.
Yeah,
so it's an interesting thing to look into.
Thanks.
Okay. So I think we've gotten a pretty good idea of who you are and the business that you're running. Mm-hmm. Before we conclude this interview, is there anything else you'd like to say?
From the business lamp side, maybe not, but I would say that the initiative that you had with the podcast and this whole thing, I think is very interesting. Thank you. Be able to look at these, disabilities in a different lens, and, make them more superpowers, not to be too cliche. Mm-hmm. But like you said, a lot of studies came out saying how dyslexia or other things maybe, not shut down, but a part of your brain doesn't work maybe how it's supposed to, but all that energy is going somewhere else. Yeah. And so it compensates. And personally, I prefer being more creative than being able to spell. That's my opinion.
Seems like a better trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you for being here, Thomas.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media for more content. See you.